You're listening to the Downeast Mike podcast, the quirky little podcast from Maine. And now, your host, Downeast Mike. Good morning, everybody. This is Downeast Mike. You're listening to the Downeast Mike podcast, coming to you live from Downeast, Maine. Not really live. This is Downeast Mike, episode 64, news and commentary for November 2nd, 2022. It is Wednesday. Wow. The week is progressing quite nicely. I hope you are too. I hope you're off to a great start today and you have many things planned, whether it's knitting or splitting wood or tapping on a keyboard. All that digital dust that you're creating, it's going to go nowhere, but it keeps your fingers occupied, doesn't it, and your eyes. Everybody's eyesight's getting worse. So this is a Downeast Mike podcast where we talk about things old, things new, and then we look at them together. We hold them up through the looking glass, and we realize that things really haven't changed all that much over the years. And our motto here is some of this is whimsy, some of it is true, and the interpretation of it all is entirely up to you. So let's look at, what's coming up today. Let's see. Today's episode, we have a heating oil price protest. It's from this day in 1979. Go figure. A hydroelectric plant opens, 1979. Can't have enough of them. The U.S. aircraft carrier group moves closer to Korea, this day in 1976. West Pittsfield needs a spanker. That was 1895. General Electric is laying off workers in 1895. And then we have Maine's ambitious Amphibian. And that's quite a story, actually. We'll get to that one in a minute. We'll look at, we're going to do word of the day in a minute. But let's look at the headlines if you're just getting up. Funny, we just looked at U.S. aircraft carrier group moving closer to Korea, 1976. And then our first headline today from BBC is North and South Korea fire missiles off each other's coast for the first time. Things have not changed much. The California city attorney frets at troubling direction of Twitter following Musk takeover and abandons platform. The suspect in the Paul Pelosi attack allegedly told police he was on a suicide mission. Brazil's Bolsonaro does not concede to Lula but authorizes transition. Iran sends 3,500 drones to Russia for its war against Ukraine. More of an economic war. Julie and Julia food writer Julie Powell dies at 49. And Hillary Clinton asks whether voters understand the importance of midterms. I ask the same question. Do we understand the importance of midterms? Those are the international world headlines. We'll see if there's anything happening in Maine of note. Concord narrows down high school principal candidates. Boy, that's exciting. There's really not, it's so hard to find local news these days. Invasive lotus plants are gone from White Park Pond, but the wildlife is not. Okay, that's good. We'll try to find at least one of the main local news story. They want to talk about Brazil and Israel in the main news. In sports news, suspect identified after threat locks down Mount Desert Island High School. See, that's exciting. That happened. They're always threatening the schools these days. Scottish fiddler Louise Bichan brings her music to 207. Yay. Bridgeton's first recovery home to open soon. Man wanted for Louisiana homicide arrested in Scarborough. Well, that's all the cheerful local Maine news. Let's go to instead... We don't have a word of the day. We're going to kind of mash it into our birthday of the day. And our birthday is Wilma Ann. of Antigonish. She'll be 55 today. We've known her for many years. She works in a bakery, and she's a workaholic. She's really reluctant to take a day off. Happy birthday, Wilma. And this is Antigonish in Nova Scotia, so it's an honorary Maine birthday today. And that's an interesting town. There's where our word comes into play. The Micmac Indians spelled this word as Nalegalkunich. And Dr. Rand, you know Mrs. Rand's boy, Dr. Rand, he says the Micmac meaning of the word is the place where branches are torn off the trees by bears getting beech nuts. And how's that for a visual? Bears tearing the branches off the trees. Have you ever seen a bear eat a blueberry? The way they do it, they grab the blueberry bush and pull it right out of the ground, and they stuff the whole thing in. They don't care. They're not going just so much for the blueberries. They'll eat the whole bush, and that's what sorts out in the end in their minds. Several writers say the name Antigonish is from the Indian word meaning river of fish, but Dr. Rand's interpretation is likely the correct one. I like to go with that. Branches torn off the trees by bears getting beech nuts. They found a way to put it into one word, a whole big sentence like that. Antigonish is a town up about 100 miles away from Halifax, Nova Scotia. It's a town of about 2,600 people live there, and I think they're best known for the university, St. FX there. It appeared about 1672 when that was founded. In 1755, it grabbed the name of Antigonish in its current form. They also, Father Pacific, that was another priest up that way, and he gave it a Micmac spelling as Elit Gunnelgig and said the meaning is broken branches. An English officer, Timothy Hirely, was in the country in 1775. He and 80 others received a very large grant of land in 1784. Isn't that nice? Let's go back to this day in 1979. There was a heating oil protest planned at the Energy Summit. And President Carter was going to go to this energy summit called by 11 northeastern governors. People are going to freeze this winter, and we want to know what's going to be done to provide fuel assistance for people who can't afford to keep warm, said John Burbank of the Community Labor Organizing Committee. They were going to meet up in Rhode Island and talk about the price of oil. Home heating oil in New England was about $1 a gallon at the time. Carter was going to address that crowd of governors and about 250 business leaders at a downtown hotel. Then it says he'll later attend a reception for about 500 people, including a woman who did his laundry while he was a midshipman at the U.S. Naval Academy in Maryland. I'm very excited, said Mrs. Mary Baton, 65. I hope I get a chance to talk to him and remind him about the laundry. Isn't that nice? So the big oil protest, 1979. We had in Quebec, Quebec's ruling Separatist Party went to work with renewed vigor, talking about next spring's independence referendum. They couldn't wait to separate from Canada. It didn't work out so well for them, but their spirits were buoyed psychologically by Saturday's grand opening of the $15.1 billion James Bay Power Project. And the event was hailed by the Parti Québécois officials as equal in significance to the opening of the Canadian Pacific Railroad. Premier René Lévesque, I always remember him with a cigarette in his mouth. He told about 2,000 cheering workers that North America's biggest hydroelectric project was a font of Quebec's energy needs and a beacon for its political future. The dam's output is equal to about 150,000 barrels of crude oil daily, and at current OPEC prices back then, that would be worth over $4 million a day. That was something to see, I bet. The first power went surging through transmission lines 600 miles south to Montreal. It's superhuman, Levesque said. Something never seen before. It left me speechless. Also on this day, 1979, Olympia Snowe, the senator from Maine, said that the United States is closely monitoring the actions of the North Korean communist regime following the Friday night assassination of South Korean President Park Chung-hee. It's a situation we want to monitor very closely. Same time, the U.S. has ordered 2 early warning aircraft to South Korea to protect against surprise attacks and moved a carrier task force closer to the Korean Peninsula in the wake of President Park Chung-hee's death. That was Defense Secretary Harold Brown. They were on Press the Meat talking about it, NBC's program. On another topic, Brown said the U.S. would be showing more military strength and capability in the Caribbean and around Central America as a result of the Soviet troop buildup in Cuba, or as Mainers like to say, Cuba. Same time, 1979, the U.S. was picking up signals of a Soviet nuclear test. The Energy Department said Sunday that seismic signals received by the U.S. indicated that the Soviet Union detonated an underground nuclear explosion late Saturday night. It was recorded around 11:17 p.m., originating in Siberia. And the signals presumably originated in an underground nuke explosion. He said it was the 13th such occurrence this year. That's too bad that they were doing that, blowing up those things. Another headline about the Gulf Oil. The chairman of Gulf Oil Company defended Sunday the huge profits announced by the oil industry last week. Headlines just as they are today. This was in 1979. Gulf reported profits for a 3-month period of $416 million, up 97%. The huge profit increases were roundly denounced in Washington as excessive, and the Carter administration said the profit figures showed the need for a windfall profits tax to accompany the president's plan to decontrol the price of domestic crude oil this day in 1979. You know, we were a little bit late with our Halloween ad, but the prices at CVS Pharmacy extended through tomorrow, November 3rd. So Halloween candy, Almond Joy Mounds, your choice, $1.49, and peppermint patties. And you can get Tootsie Rolls, Goldenberg's peanut chews. Now, could you eat just one Goldenberg peanut chew, or would you have to eat the whole bag? Wouldn't that be something on a rainy day to sit in your car looking at the seagulls eating down by the docks and just looking out at the water with a whole bag of Goldenberg's peanut chews, maybe a can of Coke, and just chewing your way through it? And then if you are of the type, maybe having a cigarette afterwards, and you could listen to some bad AM radio. That'd be a wonderful way to spend a rainy day in New England. Aspergum, aspirin, and chewing form, 66 cents. Some press-on nails for 77 cents. If you were transitioning, you wanted to experiment there. Dristan decongestant tablets. I could use some of that, $1.09. Irish Spring soap, 3 bars for $1. Now, did I ever tell you about the time I knew a fellow that he was working construction up in New Hampshire with another guy, and they were out in the hot sun in the summer and working their excavators and all that, and I guess they were staying someplace without running water for a couple of weeks on that project. And at one point, they went down to the creek and they had some Irish Spring soap, and in their words, they hadn't bathed in a couple of weeks, and out there in the hot New Hampshire sun and the dust and all that, and with their Irish Spring soap, and they looked downstream after they were scrubbing away, and they said the water was right frothy. That was a little diversion. We had an ad from Beale College. Are you a woman at the crossroads? You went to school but were never really trained to do anything? Or you made a career decision years ago and it's no longer practical, your family requires less of your time, and you are looking for a focus for the future? This ad goes on and on. You are presently employed but question where you're going. Why is this just women? Men could feel the same way. Your last paid position was so long ago that you feel completely out of touch. Your present financial circumstances require you to enter the work world, but you don't know where to begin. Your past activities leave you uncertain of your worth in today's job. What will you do with the rest of your life? Beale College can help. It doesn't say how, it just says it can. The Brewer IGA Coffee Shop, 395 North Main Street in Brewer, they had roast stuffed turkey for $2.75, all the fixings, and that they're open daily 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's a long day for that. I bet the turkey got pretty dried out with that. One last thing, let's see, on the heating rules. Let's take a look at that. Let's see, heating rules are federal government's winter heating regulations enacted this summer in an effort to conserve energy met their first test last week as a sustained blanket of chilly air moved into the Northeast. A survey of government and private office buildings, factories, etc. in the Northeast found them, for the most part, complying with the regulations, which require that temperatures in most public buildings be maintained at no more than 65 degrees, 55 degrees at night in unoccupied areas, 55 at night. Despite fingers often stiff, noses often runny, and toes often cold, the federal requirements are being grudgingly met, at least until this region gets the kind of numbing cold that can leave people chilled to the bone for days and even weeks. What a grim little story. We're going to move on. What do they say here? I tell the complainers a rule is a rule and we will just have to live by it. Well, you just have to live by it. Gee, that's awful. Sometimes you get so cold in here you can't move your fingers, Donna says. We found an ad for Texas Steer waterproof insulated leather boot. And it's a tan leather upper boot with full leather lining, waterproof and insulated steel shank on oil-resistant sole, Texas Steer, the name to depend on for quality and value. The sale price $36, regular $47.97. Now, if you remember those boots, they were just about worthless. They were cold and stiff, and they really, they leaked like, but anyway, that was a Texas Steer boot. Also, there was a Bangor mobile home, Maine's first and only 76-foot by 14-foot mobile home. And of course, the trend at that time was to buy two of those and put them together. You buy any new home in stock and we'll give you a brand new fireplace. Also sign up to win a cord of wood. Nothing quite like a good wood fire inside a mobile home for fire safety. The specials, a 1980 Oxford 70 by 14 with front utility room, paneled ceilings, and 3 doors. I bet that one's still around today. A 79 Titan 70 by 14, 1.5 baths, 3 bedrooms. Of course, you got to walk through one bedroom to get to the other, right? In those things. That was Bangor Mobile Home, 1979. Win a free cord of wood. So that's where their mind was. This day in 1907, the town of Kerata in Bokhara, Russian Turkestan, there was an earthquake or a mountain slide as a result of an earthquake, and the entire population, about 15,000 people, was buried by a mountain slide following that earthquake. The governor and his mother were the only persons who survived. That is very sad. Russia, Turkestan, and that had actually the earthquake had occurred on October 21st, and then the landslide. What else do we have from that day? Let's look at let's go to the local news. The sudden death of Miss Lovina Townsend was a surprise to many. Although she was 82, she died on Sunday, and this was 1894. She made pies and did other cooking for the family, but was taken sick in the afternoon, and she died Wednesday of pneumonia. Clinton Goodhue realized that Good Samaritans are not all dead when the neighbors took possession Monday the 21st and did not leave until his apples and potatoes were harvested. A string of 8 men digging made short work of the potatoes while others hustled the apples in. Mr. Goodhue, his wife, and hired man are all in bed with typhoid fever, but are not dangerously sick. G.B. Reynolds was packing apples to be shipped at once for cold storage. Help was scarce on this day, 1894, in Sydney, Maine. $2.50 per day has been paid in some instances for good help on apples and potatoes. Also, Mrs. John Allen met with a serious accident in Yarmouth last week when their horse became frightened at an electric car and Mrs. Allen jumped out, breaking her leg near the ankle. Poor Mrs. Allen. George Bowers, the U.S. Commissioner of Fisheries, does not believe that experiments with dogfish to prove their usefulness as human food will be successful. I've come to the conclusion, he said, that the dogfish can be exterminated only by using them as material for fertilizer or by granting of a state bounty by Massachusetts on each dogfish head. Dogfish a la Newburgh may be tasty, but not for me, although I understand that the Japanese sell dried dogfish as halibut. When I was at Woods Hole recently, a 27-pound dogfish was cut open. I found in the stomach 5 lobsters valued at about $1. The dogfish was worth about 1 cent. So a dogfish has a repository of young lobsters. The survey of the proposed electric road between Portland and Lewiston has been completed as far as Gray. This road will be built sometime during the summer of 1908. I think my date's wrong. That should be a 1907 story. Either by parties now promoting the scheme or by others, it's known that the present officers of the company are more than anxious to get to work. And it's also known that the John Graham Syndicate has been keeping a weather eye on the Portland-Lewiston field. The proposed connection by way of Freeport or Yarmouth through Durham to Auburn is being urged with great vigor by Auburn parties, and it may be that this road will also be constructed, but the project is still very new. The road will be an easy one to build as the hills are not bad and the country is nearly all sand. Isn't that exciting? This day in 1894, the largest water wheel in Maine is at the mill of W.B. and E.P. Kendall in Bodenham. The wheel was placed there in the Cat Hance current years ago by Mr. Kendall's father and has been steadily run day after day. Its diameter, this water wheel, nearly 30 feet, is placed upright in the current, and at high tide it is submerged for nearly all its bulk. The wheel is operated by the tide as it ebbs and flows through the great circle of spokes, even the slowest current flowing against its broad, beveled spokes or flukes, revolving it and furnishing horsepower sufficient to run 2 mills. So a big water wheel in Bodenham, enough energy to run two mills. Story from Vassalboro. A woman started to go down her cellar stairs early the other morning. She met a tramp just coming up, and while she was calling out for her husband, the visitor escaped with a pie. That tramp will get on. I wonder what kind of pie that was. Where are the men of Waldo County? The Belfast Age this week tells of an East Belfast woman who cut a bad gash in her forehead by her axe, striking a clothesline while she was cutting wood. And who hasn't caught their axe up on a line above their head when they were swinging it? And also of 2 young ladies in a neighboring town who, after several unsuccessful attempts to get the highway surveyor to fix the road, went out and fixed it themselves by putting in boughs and sods, taking matters into their own hands. All right, it's time for Maine's ambitious amphibian. This little critter, I saw him the other night, early in the morning, one of those warm, rainy nights that we've had recently, and I thought I'd seen something miraculous. And it was this little salamander crawling across the driveway. And I thought, oh, he got washed down from the hinterlands there with all the runoff. And I was so impressed with myself to see this guy, and the dog and I just looked at him, and he wandered off. The salamander, not the dog. But this is what you need to know. This is a significant fact about this ambitious amphibian. It is Maine's most most abundant amphibian, and likely the most abundant terrestrial vertebrate in Maine. The biomass of this species alone is estimated to be higher than the combined biomass of deer and moose in Maine woods. It mates on land from October through April. Eggs are laid the following summer in cavities in decaying wood. So this is the eastern redback salamander, Plethodon cinereus. Just a little guy, 2.5 to 5 inches in length, 3 distinct color variations, a striped red-backed morph, which is the abundant one, unstriped lead-backed morph, which is uncommon to locally common, and then the erythristic bright red morph, which is rare. And I saw the abundant one, the striped redback one. So the redback variation is brown reddish, orangish or reddish brown stripe along the back, dark sides, black or mottled gray underside. So it's common and secure statewide. This is from the Maine State website. It habitats a forest. It's most abundant in deciduous or mixed forest. It's common under leaf litter, rocks, decaying logs, and also in burrows. It eats invertebrates including ants, beetles, flies, earthworms, and ticks. Maybe we should have salamander farms to take care of the ticks. It overwinters deep underground in forests. So you can tell everybody about that today. Guess which biomass of species is higher than combined biomass of deer and moose in Maine forests? I never would have guessed it was a salamander. Let's do the weather forecast and then send you out the door to greet the day. For the overnight hours tonight, mostly clear with a low of 46. For today, Wednesday, November 2nd, it'll be sunny with a high of 62 degrees. And then Thursday through Saturday, daytime highs would be partly sunny. Daytime highs in the 60s and 70s, and overnight lows in the 40s and 50s. So for this time of year, some remarkably nice weather. That's about it for our podcast today. Until next time, this is Downeast Mike wishing you and your loved ones a day that is full of grace, love, and kindness. We will see ya.